Hello and welcome to the class. My name is Daniel, and today we're going to be looking at detailed reading. Now, if you have a question after the class, you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. This is the first of two classes and will last around 15 minutes. First, we're going to talk about what detailed reading is, and then we're going to talk about when to use it in your IELTS exam. So by the end of this session, you'll be more aware of this reading style. Now, during the class, there'll be questions for you to answer. These will appear below the video. I'll tell you when you need to answer them, and I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds to answer each one. But you may want to pause the video to give yourself a bit more time for them. So let's get started. Let's first look at what detailed reading is. Well, it's reading to get a comprehensive understanding of a text or part of a text. And what we mean by this word comprehensive is to fully understand it, like 100 or 95% of it, the majority of it. Well, when should you read in detail? Well, there's a couple of situations. The first would be when you're doing matching headings to paragraph questions. And we're going to see some examples of those in a moment, but they're very, very common in the IELTS reading. Pretty much every single test will have one on it. Another time is when you need to fully understand part of a text. So generally, it could be a paragraph or a section, and you're going to use this strategy in that situation. So how do we do it then? Well, the first step is to read the first two sentences in a paragraph. Now, in academic reading, generally the most important information is contained in the first couple of sentences of a paragraph, the main topic. So that would be step one to this. Then you read the last sentence of that paragraph, and then you would skim the rest of the paragraph for any key words, like most important words or words that you need to try to answer the question. Now, by doing that, you'll have a good picture of most of what is contained in that paragraph. It's important as well that you ignore any words that you don't know. The problem with trying to understand every single word is that it wastes a lot of time, and time is very, very precious in the IELTS reading. So you want to ignore any words you don't know. If you don't know them, there's nothing that can help really. So keep skipping past them and continue trying to understand the whole paragraph rather than specific little details of it. And remember, don't rush. This reading style takes a bit longer than other ones like skimming and scanning, but when you need to do it, you have to do it and you have to take your time. If you rush, you're not going to fully understand the text, or you're not going to fully understand the part of the text that you're reading. So please take your time, do it slowly, and try to get a comprehensive understanding of that part that you're reading. If you do rush it, you'll probably have to just come back again and read it again. So in a way, you're going to waste more time if you do try and rush. Well, let's have a little example here. So we're going to read part of a text called Toki Pona, which is about a language that has been designed or created. So here's one of the paragraphs, and we're going to try to answer this question. So the first one that I'd like you to look at is below the video, and I'd like you to just answer this. How many sentences are in this paragraph? I'm just going to give you 10 to 15 seconds to try that. Okay, so let's look at this together. Well, sentences are easy to see because they'll always have a stop. So we can see we've got one stop here. That's one sentence. We've got another stop here. So that's two sentences. There's another stop there. So that's three sentences. There's another stop there. That's four. And then there's a stop there. So there's 5 sentences in this paragraph. So if we were using the strategy from before, we'd read the first 2 and the last one, and then we just look at the keywords in the middle. Now, I'd like you to look at the next question below the video and answer this. Are there any words that you don't know? I'll just give you 10 to 15 seconds to think of that. Okay, so probably the answer is yes, because it has this word here, conlang, which you've probably never seen before. But the good thing is that here it gives this definition. It means it's a constructed language. So that's explaining what that means. Now, all the other words, if you don't know them, they're probably not super important. If it is really important, like this word conlang, the writer will probably give you a definition of it. And you can still understand the general meaning without understanding every single word. Now look at question 3 below the video, and I want you to say, what is the paragraph about? Is it about why the language was created, the continued development of the language, or what Toki Pona is? I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds to think of that. Okay, let's look together. Well, in these first 2 sentences, it says when it was created. So it talks about who made it, Sonia Lang. She created the language. And then it tells us a bit about it. It says it has 120 words and no use of tenses, and that it's no ordinary language. So that's in the first 2 sentences, we can get that. Then in the last sentence, it says this is a principle reflected in the name of the language. The language means speak simply or good communication, among other interpretations. And we can skim the middle and you can just see like stuff like it's a con language, a constructed language, and it was a product of Lang's informal experiments. So just by looking at those things, we can see, does it talk about why the language was created? No, it doesn't say why. Does it talk about the continued development of the language, how it's developing now? No, it doesn't describe that at all. Is it talking about what the language is? Yes, it's giving us an explanation of what is the language. So it's a constructed language and it has no tenses and it uses only 120 words. So 3, or I, is the correct answer to that one here. So by using that detailed reading strategy, we haven't had to read every word. You've just read the first 2 sentences, the last sentence, and you've just looked at some of the most important words in the middle. And by doing that, we can already answer this matching headings to paragraphs question. Now let's have another bit of practice. So here is a bit of a bigger paragraph here, and it's labeled paragraph F. And what we're going to try and do is say, what is the best paragraph heading for this paragraph? Would it be what to leave in and what to leave out? Which colors should be included? Or copying the languages of the past? Now, I want you to look at the next question below the video and choose one of those options. And remember to do this strategy we just spoken about, the detailed reading strategy. So read the first two sentences, read the last sentence, and just quickly look at the keywords in the middle. Okay, well, let's have a little look now together. So we're going to start by first going over the first sentence. So it says, it talks about the creation of her new language. She worked against the usual trend of lexical construction, whereby languages add their vocabularies organically over time through exposure to new items and concepts. Now, this one here, she said she worked against it, whereas here it says copying the languages of the past. So it can't be that one. So it's not the third option. It then says she started with a long list of terms and decided which were dispensable, so which you could throw away, and ended with an array of words, including nouns, adjectives, and verbs, which she felt covered the basic universal concepts effectively and could be combined to create any conceivable item or concept. So from this first two paragraphs, we've got a lot of information there already. Sorry, from the first two sentences. And then we need to read the last sentence, and it says, ultimately, she decided to translate only the three primary colors, leaving all of the shades and combinations of these, purple being described as lasso, loje, blue, red. So here it's talked about colors. So you might think, okay, it's about which colors should be included. But that's just the last sentence, okay? If you remember in this beginning bit, it talks about which words were dispensable and all the words, the nouns, the adjectives, the verbs that she decided to include. So the colors was just an example of some of the words she decided to include and some that she decided to leave out. So actually the whole paragraph is talking about what words to leave in and what to leave out. So the correct answer in this situation would be I. So we can really see how a quite big paragraph, that's quite a large paragraph we just read, but we read it quite quickly. We just read the first two sentences, the last sentence, and looked at a couple of words in the middle. But even just from the first two sentences to the last sentence, we got a really good idea of the general meaning of that paragraph. And that is the aim of detailed reading. And it can really, really, really save you a lot of time. Okay, if you have any questions, remember you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. Now remember to take class 2 on this topic and to do the online training and practice activities. Thank you very much for coming to the class. We'll see you again. Goodbye. Hello and welcome to the class. My name's Daniel, and today we're going to be looking at detailed reading. Now, if you have a question after the class, you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. This is the second of 2 classes and will last around 15 minutes. First, we're going to talk about what matching headings to paragraph questions require, and then we're going to have some practice answering them. So by the end of the session, you'll be more aware of how to answer this type of reading question. Now, during the class, there'll be questions that appear below the video. I'll tell you when you need to answer them, and I'll give you 10 to 15 seconds for each one. But you might want to pause the video to give yourself some more time to answer them. So let's start by looking at what matching headings to paragraph questions involve. So you start with a list of headings marked with Roman numerals like these, I, and IV, etc. And you have to match these to a paragraph. So you have to choose a heading that describes each paragraph. Often you don't need all of the headings. So maybe there's like 6 paragraphs, but you have 10 headings. So that can make it quite difficult because some of the headings sometimes have similar meanings. And it requires you to have a full understanding of each paragraph, because it's not just checking your understanding of one small part of the paragraph. Unlike a lot of other IELTS questions where you just have to find the keywords and see if one sentence is paraphrased, in this one, you actually have to understand the full paragraph and what is the main idea in that paragraph to answer it correctly. And because it's dealing with paragraphs, it covers the whole text. So you're not just looking at part of a text, you're looking at the whole text, and you're having to often jump around the text sometimes. This makes it quite difficult because there's a lot of text to read. So it should really be one of the first questions you try to answer if it's there. As I say, do this question type before the others, because once you've read each paragraph and you understand it, then the questions later will be much easier because you'll go, ah, yeah, okay, I know where that question is. It's in paragraph B or it's in paragraph C. So it's really important, if you have a matching headings to paragraph questions, do it before all other questions. So let's look at the strategy or how to answer this type of question. So the first thing that you need to do is read the headings first. So you look through them and you highlight the keywords. What we mean by keywords are the most important words in the headings. We're going to look at how to do this in a moment. When you've done that, you need to read the paragraphs in detail. We looked at this in class 1. So you're reading the first 2 sentences of each paragraph, the last sentence, and then you're quickly skimming some of the most important words in the middle of the paragraph. So you read the paragraphs in detail. And it's a good idea when you've read each paragraph that you quickly make a note of what you think the main idea of that paragraph is. This will then help you to match it later to the headings. So yeah, as I say, it's good to think, what do you think is the main idea in that paragraph? Once you've got your ideas, then you need to check them with the headings and see which ones match the best to the headings. And it's really important, as I said, you have to get an understanding of the whole paragraph. Don't just look for keywords, because they might be distractors. What I mean by distractors is they might be something that makes you think, ah, yes, this is the correct answer. But actually, the people writing the exam put it there to kind of distract you, to take your attention away from the correct answer. So if you're just looking for keywords, a lot of the time you'll make a mistake. And it's really, really important that you try to get a full understanding of that paragraph that you're reading. So we're going to have a bit of practice now, and we can see here that we've got 4 headings. So we've got the principles behind the language, how the language operates, an increasing interest in the language, and why the language grew more popular. And what we're going to do is just do the first step of the strategy for answering these types of questions. So we said we had to read them and highlight the key words. So what are key words? Well, keywords are nouns and noun phrases, for one. For example, here you can see principles is a noun. That would be a keyword. Language is a noun. That would also be a keyword. How the language operates, that would be a keyword. That's another noun. And increasing interest is a noun, so that would be a keyword. And again, language. And then why the language grew more popular. So we've highlighted the nouns there. That's some of the keywords. You'd also want to highlight any verbs or verb phrases. So here we can see the verb operate, and we can see grow as well. So we want to highlight those. Other things that would be considered keywords are adjectives. Now we can see we've just got one adjective here, which is popular or more popular. So we'd want to highlight that as well. Oh, and increasing as well is an adjective here. And then you'd want to highlight any adverbs or adverb phrases. So adverbs are things like how is an adverb and why is also an adverb. And they're really important because look here, how the language operates, that's different to why the language operates. Okay, so the adverbs do make a big difference. So that difference would be like here, we can see in 4, it says an increasing interest in the language and why the language grew more popular. Now, grow more popular and increasing interest, they have the same meaning. But the difference is this one is specifically talking about why it grew more popular, whereas this one is not looking at why. So those adverbs can be very important. Well, let's look at these two paragraphs here. Now, what I'd like you to do is to use that detailed reading strategy to get a general understanding for each paragraph. So remember, I want you to read the first 2 sentences of each paragraph, the last sentence, and then just quickly skim the middle bits. Now, I'm going to give you a bit of time to try that now, and then we'll look at them together. We're trying to think, what is the general idea of that paragraph? Okay, so let's have a look together. Well, if we start with this first paragraph, we can see that it talks about the driving force of the language. It also mentions these 2 philosophies of directness in this first sentence. And then it talks about it's a reaction against modern civilization was at the heart of it. And then at the end, it says that belief is hardwired into the language. So it's talking about the main core concept behind the language, the philosophy of the language, if you like, or another word, you could even say the principles of the language. And we can see that just from reading the first 2 sentences here and this last sentence, that this paragraph is all about the main idea behind the language or the philosophy of the language. Now let's look at the second paragraph, or paragraph C. So, well, we can see it's talking about some dates, 2007, and they said there were 100 online fans that could speak the language. And then there was a guide added, and this in 2014, and it increased its exposure. And then finally here it talks about 2017, there were several members that were collaborating, and a library of literature was created and resources could be found. So it's talking about how it grew, how the language grew or developed. So it started in 2007 and got bigger and bigger and bigger, as we can see here. So again, just by reading those first 2 sentences, the last one, we can get a general understanding of the whole paragraph. Well, let's now look at which of these headings that we saw before would match up with paragraph B. What I want you to do is look at the question below the video and choose one of the 4 headings. Okay, well, hopefully you chose this one as the correct one. So remember, we're talking about how it mentioned the philosophies and the driving force and what was at the heart of it and the belief that is hardwired into the language. So belief at the heart of, philosophy, driving force, all of these are connected to the principles behind the language. So it's the reason she created it, the principles for it. So that's the correct one for that. Now, just be a bit careful, because if we look here, you've got the word operates in 3, and you've got the word operation. Now, if you're just looking for keywords and you saw operates and you saw operation, you might think, okay, operates, operation, these two go together. And this is an example of a distractor, because if you're just looking for 1 or 2 words and you're matching it up based on that, you're probably going to get it wrong. So it really is about getting a general understanding of the whole paragraph first before making your decisions. Now let's do the same for this next paragraph. Again, have a little look at the question below the video and see if you can choose the correct option. Okay, well, the correct answer here is this one. So as we said, it talks about the different dates and how the language was becoming more popular. Now, the difference between these is this one says it's why the language grew more popular. Now, nowhere in here does it talk about any reasons why the language was becoming more popular. It doesn't say because this was happening. So it doesn't give any particular reasons for it. It just does say that the language was growing and growing and growing, and giving examples of how it was growing. So 5, this one, is not the correct answer because it doesn't give us enough information to say why. It just is an increasing interest in the language. So that word why was really important to understanding that that's not the correct heading. Okay, if you have any questions, remember you can go to the top of the screen and click on the chat icon to send us a message. Now remember to complete the online training and do the practice activities. Thank you very much for coming to the class. We'll see you again. Bye.